Okay, and here we go with one of my favourite topics, Nottingham Forest. Now, if we were talking about any other team here, Des, we would say, oh, this is a chaotic, unprecedented start to the season, wouldn't we? But it's not really at Forest because we've been here many, many times. So a managerial change, the first one in the Championship this season, is obviously the highlight news across this first 11 games. I guess you're going to have to focus on that and sort of two blocks, really, one under Houghton and one under new boss Steve Cooper. But can you reflect on the first 11 games, which sees Forest in 17th?
Okay, so the first, like you say, it's almost been a season of two halves already. So the first 7 games under Chris Houghton was abysmal, for the want of a better word. The 1 point from 21, didn't really look like scoring. When we conceded, it was game over. It was the writing was on the wall as soon as that first goal went in. Somebody who's been asked for predictions in the past, I always said whoever scores first in a Forest match is likely to win.
Right.
It was never us. And all that was after a little bit of optimism, in pre-season. Brennan Johnson coming back from his successful loan spell, some youngsters in and around the team, João Carvalho coming back from his loan spell, another manager to give him a test, and it just went from sort of bad to the ridiculously bad. It was just it was a carbon copy of what we experienced last season. Like you said, the situation, the Forest situation, the Forest start to a season is we have to implode before we actually get going. And when we had Sabri Lamucci and lost those 4 games, probably after an hangover from the season before, when we sort of got dumped out of the last game, out of the playoffs in the last game, we was expecting a lot of a manager with a great CV, great credentials, and it just never really happened under Chris Houghton. We started off really, really poorly, and then I think there was a disconnection because of the COVID situation. Just nobody could relate because the form had not been fantastic before we got back in the grounds. So there was upheaval, sort of. The word toxic was being branded around, with the fans and the management and the hierarchy, the people who run the club. And it was just going one way, and it was a really frightening situation. They made the inevitable decision, and all of a sudden, it's like flipping a coin, It's like sort of, I can't believe in 3 games the positivity that's kind of pouring out of the club again. It's really, really bizarre. And of course, we've got the results to show for it, and we're scoring goals. One of the things we was told under Houghton was that we didn't have the players to do certain things. But Steve Cooper's come in, who we all believed was slightly defensive himself.
Yeah, reasonably so.
He's got so much out of these youngsters, so much out of the pace. One of the things we've been accused of for a lot of time over the last few years is a lack of pace. Lewis Grabban, Lyle Taylor, of course, are sort of 30 plus. But all of a sudden, when we've not played fantastically well at times, but when we get the ball, we look like an attacking threat. They look like they've got a bit of belief, a bit of courage. That's one word I'd use. Some of the players we've got in midfield have been criticised for playing it back a lot. Ryan Yates is one in particular, gets a lot of stick for a homegrown player. So he seemed to have lost his confidence. But again, under Chris Houghton, players like that are really, really excelling. Brennan Johnson, Alex Myton is when he's been in the team. Joe Lolly seems to be sort of hitting a bit of form again. So it feels like that the manager, he'd almost lost the dressing room, I believe. He'd almost lost the players, because now it's probably a little bit unfair on him again, because I don't believe it was all his fault. But the players seem to be full of spirits. All the social media's coming out. It looks like a team again. For the last 12 months, it's not really looked like a team.
You mentioned a few names there. Who's been the pick for you so far? And I guess try and string it over the last 11 games, but I guess you're probably going to be focusing on the last 4 for your top Forest player this season.
Well, to be honest, I think, and I think it's probably the obvious pick, because it's Brennan Johnson. He's the one being touted for the big move. Obviously, Brentford was really keen on him in the summer, and they're really. He started the first game very well. We went 1-0 up and we conceded 2 late goals, which is a little bit strange against Coventry for us to do, because we played really well in that game and it looked really optimistic. And then it all faded off a bit. Johnson spent a little bit of time out of the team. There might have been a few sort of issues around COVID. He might have been dropped. The reasons was a little bit unclear, but it was only 1 or 2. And then when he came back, he came back for the Derby game, where we actually picked up a first point. We'd been outplayed for 60 minutes. And then he scored the goal to equalise, and we looked really strong sort of after that. He played well for the next few games, but like I say, when Cooper came in, it's almost like he's been given a new lease of life. In his second game, Cooper's second game, he put Brennan Johnson up front, which was really, really interesting, because we had Grabban and Taylor on the bench. Grabban had a slight knock, and it just seemed to then give him the confidence that the manager believes in him, wholly believes in him, really sort of got behind him. And whilst he didn't do, this is the Barnsley game 3 games ago now, whilst he didn't do a massive amount right up front, when Grabban came on then, after 60 minutes, the game flipped on its head, and Johnson in the last 3 games has just been on a different level to the rest of them. His pace, I talk with friends about the fact he gets to the byline. There's not many players in the Championship that actually sort of hit that byline now anymore. And Johnson's one of those players who can beat a man. He can wiggle his way across the byline. And if you're pulling a ball back from sort of 6 yards, it's dangerous. It can either set up a chance, set up a goal, or own goal, or whatever. But he seems to be the one for me that's really, really sort of coming into the fore, and I'm sure in January that they're going to be sniffing around him again.
Well, one thing we know about Steve Cooper from Swansea, Des, is he's very good with young players. He's very good at building them up and increasing their values, etc. And he's also quite innovative up front. We went through the whole of last season, and Swansea weren't really playing a central striker up front. It was Mayhew and Lowe being used there. So, yeah, it might be a very good partnership between Brennan Johnson and Steve Cooper. Look, without digging anybody out and accentuating the positive, who do you think you can see more of from that Forest squad as we go forward for the remainder of the season?
One of the guys we were particularly sort of keen to get back after the summer was James Garner. He'd come on loan last season from Manchester United. He'd been at Watford. He'd done okay, but he'd fallen out of favour there. And he didn't
quite fit, did it?
No, he came to us, and it just changed everything. It's the feeling we've almost got when Cooper's come in. We felt positive again. We felt we had that sort of little bit of guile and a little bit of intelligence in midfield, and he'd done really, really well. And we was all sort of clamouring to get him back as quickly as we could this season to sort of hit the ground running. But in all reality, he's not done what he did last season. And I could see under Houghton, and when we were losing games, and the first half against Barnsley, his confidence just really started to drop. Some of the basics, like just 5-yard passes, he was knocking out of play. The things he's really, really good at. The things that make him possibly a Premier League player rather than a Championship player. And it just wasn't working. So I'm hoping, again, he's a young player, and you mentioned there Steve Cooper likes his young players and likes to work with them, and we all know his record with that. I'm hoping he can do a lot with that. He took him out of the team against Birmingham on Saturday, which was interesting, and he put in Jack Coyle back, who divides opinion as well. I'm a fan of Jack Coyle back, but he's an older player, so it's interesting that he went for that experience. But he said that it's not over for Garner. There's lots to sort of work with. So we're looking for a bit more there. And 1 or 2 players have come in on loan. Jed Spence, Max Lowe. Jed Spence in particular has done really, really well. We can't believe Middlesbrough have let him go, but he's doing really well. Max Lowe's steady. So they've plugged a few gaps. So hopefully they sort of continue in the same form. And then, like I said, the attacking players are just starting to do what
it's starting to click now, aren't they? Yeah. Particularly Zinkernagel and Johnson, I guess. If we were sat here at Christmas, Des, Forest obviously 17th. They're trending upwards quite steeply at the moment. It would be fair to say it won't continue that steeply, else there'll be 10 points from every 4 games they'll be top after a while. But would you? I assume you would see them. I'm asking everyone higher or lower. I'm assuming you'd see them being higher at Christmas than where they are currently.
I would do, yeah. I think with the positivity and the fact that I mentioned before about the players being enthusiastic again, the team spirit you see in pictures on social media of groups of players, rather than players doing their own thing. It looks like these good players we know we've got, the Zinkernagel, Joe Lolly, Johnson, Graben, they're all starting to gel again. They're all starting to feel it. And it's not the best thing to say that they wasn't feeling it, because that doesn't say a great deal about them. But, this is football, isn't it? And players go through spells like that. So I think by Christmas, if we can be looking towards sort of 12th, I'd be happy, And again, it just shows a bit of progress. Whilst I think the playoffs is probably out of reach this season, there's going to be games where if we go for it the way we've gone for it in the last 3 games, there's going to be games we get beat and probably get beat well. We've had a bit of luck in those games. Goalkeeper played fantastic on Saturday. He's also come back into form. So I think I'd take sort of pushing up towards mid-table, and then if you're safe, you never know, do you? You can perhaps go for it a little bit more in games and see where you nick a few wins, and you might just be on the edge of the playoffs.
Yeah, well said, well said. This is going to be quite a tricky one for you then, because this splits right down the middle. I'm looking for a grade, A to E, old school GCSE grade for Forest so far. I don't know how you're going to get your head around this, but what grade would you give the Nottingham Forest season so far? And you can give a detailed answer if you want.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned the old GCSE sort of grades there. The first 7 games would have been an ungraded, a U.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Yeah.
It wasn't even good enough for the lowest grade. But in the last few games, 7 points from 9, you're looking at sort of C plus, B, perhaps even higher over that period. So over the season, the reality is going into the season, I didn't see us being much higher than where we are now. I just didn't expect us to be so inconsistent. Of course, being in that position means you're going to be a little bit inconsistent, but I didn't expect us to lose all those games at the start of the season. So I never expected, I didn't think we was much stronger or any stronger than we were last season. We didn't get the loan players we needed as quickly as we wanted them. So I was expecting to be around this position. So, sort of D minus, D, with the way it's flipped on its head, it's just starting, we're just starting to push up the table now, and making us feel confident. And that's all we need. We get criticised a lot as fans, as Forest fans, for moaning and this and that. But like you said yourself at the start, this happens every year. I think in many ways we've got right to sort of complain. But all we want is this bit of optimism, bit of enthusiasm about the place, and from sort of the mindset of Chris Hughton. And he was a nice man. He was a quiet man. He wasn't an in-your-face bloke. But now having somebody to almost sort of grab the club by the scruff of the neck, and he's doing his fist pumps and things to the crowd. That's all we want, so to feel like we're kind of involved again, and to feel like we've got half a chance in games.
Absolutely, yeah, very, very well put, Des. Brilliant to hear from you. Whereabouts can people find you on Twitter if they want to follow you over there?
My Twitter handle is @DesOldham. I also do a YouTube channel. It's different to football, absolutely different. I talk. It's a personal vlog, but I talk about sort of a soft approach to mental health. So I kind of talk about my experience of everyday life. I don't use all the technical terms. I just go about my business and sort of report back where I get it wrong, where I get it right. I try and encourage a bit of activity and running. I'm into running and that kind of thing. So I try and sort of encourage people to enjoy the things they enjoy, football being one of them, of course.
Brilliant stuff, Des. Go and check that out. And yes, a low grade, but definitely room for improvement, I think, going forward for Forest. Thank you very much, Des.
Thank you.